All right, let's dive right into this explainer. I want you to picture a town that still stubbornly shows up in dusty old phone books, a real place where people lived, worked, and raised their kids. Yet it's a place that the federal government officially decided should, well, no longer exist. We're looking at what is essentially a modern-day ghost story, but one built entirely on documented facts, geological anomalies, and bureaucratic paperwork.
So you really have to wonder, how exactly do you erase an entire town without it making front-page news everywhere? It's a bizarre mystery, one that involves no mail carriers, failing GPS routes, and an invisible, unstoppable force. We're all pretty used to towns booming or busting, right? But an outright administrative erasure? That is incredibly rare. How does an American town just vanish overnight? Not from a single explosive catastrophe, but through a slow, incredibly deliberate removal from both the physical and the paper world.
To put this into perspective, the contrast is just staggering. Back in 1890, Centralia was a massive, thriving 19th century anthracite coal mining hub. We're talking over 2,700 residents. It was a bustling, lively community. And today, fewer than 10 residents and absolutely zero zip codes. It is a stunning collapse that leaves behind these eerie, empty street grids right where vibrant neighborhoods used to be. So, to understand how we got from point A to point B, we actually have to look underground. Part 1. The mundane spark. How a routine cleanup doomed a town. Back in May of 1962, a fire was supposedly sparked just to clear out a local landfill right before the Memorial Day holiday. Honestly, it sounds like standard municipal housekeeping, doesn't it? But the fatal flaw was the location. That specific landfill pit was sitting directly above an unsealed network of abandoned mining tunnels. It was just a small spark in the absolute worst possible place, basically opening a gateway straight into the earth. The real kicker here was what lay underneath, the Buck Mountain vein. When that landfill fire breached an unsealed opening, it didn't just hit dirt, it entered one of the largest underground anthracite coal deposits in the entire region. Seams of coal running for literal miles beneath the earth gave this fire a virtually unlimited source of fuel. Now, I do want to mention that some longtime residents completely dispute the 1962 landfill story. They actually claim that an older, unextinguished fire from the 1930s or 40s just reignited. But, regardless of what initially sparked it, the fire found the coal and it started to spread like wildfire. Moving on to part 2, the turning point, the invisible monster beneath the streets. For decades, this crisis just kept escalating in the background. From 1962 all the way to 1979, the town made multiple attempts to extinguish or even just contain the fire. They tried flushing the tunnels with water. They tried digging these massive trenches, and every single attempt failed, or it was only partially effective. The fire just continued its slow, creeping march beneath the town, pushing Centralia closer and closer to a boiling point. The ground itself literally started to change. Things got undeniably real in 1979. A local gas station owner was using a stick to check the fuel levels in his underground tank. When he pulled it out, he discovered the gasoline was heating up to an incredibly dangerous 172 degrees Fahrenheit. The fire wasn't just some deep underground nuisance anymore. It was brushing right up against highly explosive infrastructure. But the absolute breaking point, the moment the whole country finally snapped to attention, happened in 1981. A 12-year-old kid named Todd Domboski was just hanging out in his grandmother's backyard when a massive 150-foot deep sinkhole opened up entirely without warning, nearly swallowing him whole. And worse, that sinkhole was emitting lethal levels of carbon monoxide. Thankfully, Todd was pulled to safety by his cousin. But this near-fatal event was the ultimate turning point. It proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the ground beneath their feet was actively collapsing. Which brings us to part 3, bureaucratic erasure and holdouts, solving the problem by deleting the town. Actually erasing a town from existence involves a pretty dark administrative reality. Step 1 kicked off in 1983, following the sinkhole incident, when Congress allocated over $42 million for voluntary relocation. Most people took the buyouts and left. Step 2 hit in 1992, when the state of Pennsylvania officially invoked eminent domain, condemning all the remaining buildings. And then Step 3. This is the highly unusual, symbolic death blow. In 2002, the U.S. Postal Service officially revoked Centralia's zip code, 17927. They literally wiped it off the paper map, completely. Now, you can probably guess there was some fierce human resistance to all this. A handful of folks, like a man named John Lokitas Jr., fought these forced relocations for decades, and their perspectives were deeply rooted in skepticism. They strongly believed the danger was being drastically overstated, and they pointed out that they had lived there safely for years despite the fire. Plus, some of them suspected a hidden motive. They claimed the government actually just wanted to secure the incredibly valuable coal rights beneath their homes once they were forced out. The state's eviction battles against these holdouts were intense, and they dragged on all the way until 2009.
Finally, Part 4, A Town Still Burning, Centralia's Eerie Afterlife.
In the real world, a section of Route 61 was actually closed down in 1993 because the ground was literally subsiding from the fire beneath it. It famously became known as the Graffiti Highway, this cracked, totally abandoned stretch of road that drew thousands of urban explorers, right up until the landowner finally buried the whole thing in dirt in 2020 to stop trespassers. But in pop culture, younger audiences will immediately recognize Centralia's toxic smoke and falling ash. It was the direct, real-world inspiration for the hit video game and movie franchise Silent Hill. It's crazy to think this town lives on as a digital nightmare, even as its actual streets sit completely empty. Today, the reality of Centralia is honestly chilling. Experts estimate that the coal beneath the town has enough fuel to keep burning for up to 250 more years. And the remaining population? Just 4 to 7 people. Following a major settlement in 2013, these final holdouts are legally allowed to live out their days in their homes, which will then revert to the state upon their passing. It leaves the town in this incredibly weird legal limbo. It's technically still legally incorporated, but functionally, it's entirely demolished. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we're left with a deeply unsettling thought about administrative erasure. Sure, Centralia's fire was a physical disaster, but its true disappearance, that was an act of bureaucracy. It really makes us wonder what happens to other disappearing places out there, places deemed just too dangerous or inconvenient to exist, like the chemical weapon test sites of Skull Valley or the vanished population of Bikini Atoll. If a town is still burning right beneath our feet, but it's been scrubbed from all our maps, does it still exist? Keep questioning the maps you rely on.